What up friends, I'm James, your host, and today I'm going to be reviewing the debut album by Disco Hue, the Yearbook. Like I said before, this is the debut album of the Singaporean synth pop rock duo Disco Hue. After breaking out into the scene with their Arcade EP and a few singles, Disco Hue are providing some interesting combinations of 80s and 90s pop and pop rock while also bringing it into the modern era. The result is a pretty endearing project that will hopefully set the bar for things to come from this band. So, let's take a look. The intro definitely demonstrates the group's 80s influences, and it provides a quick burst of energy before the album really kicks off. It's a pretty good transition into the first actual song, too. With Echoes, the vocals here are the immediate standout. Sherilyn has a very unique vocal style, and the main instrumental being a combination of 80s pop and modern EDM is an interesting choice. The keys have this sort of 90s and early 2000s dance influence as well, and this sort of brings to the forefront the layers of influences here, and this also transitions into the chorus and the drop of the song too. The lyrics are fairly standard about your typical relationships and things like that, but they're delivered sensitively and passionately enough to where they feel at home within the track. Ultra Venus is a pretty good track, it's probably one of my favorites, and this one is definitely going in a more synth pop direction. It kind of reminds me of the route that LaRoe took with her last album a few years ago. I love the little guitar picking alongside the synthesized drums and that deep synth tone. The chorus especially has this sort of pop anthem sound to it that's pretty cute, and it really fits the sort of love poem-esque lyrics that we're going for here. A more subtle touch that I also really appreciated is how the instrumentals are more digitized during the verses and they're more natural during the chorus, and I think that contrast really helps fit the emotions that are being discussed in the song, and it just kind of adds a quirky little element that I enjoy. Now, as I said before, the vocals have a very noticeable 90s pop influence, and this is especially noticeable with the song Right on Top, Back to You. One thing I will say, the sampled vocals that are interspersed around this track and a few tracks in the album overall are not exactly the element that I would take from modern pop. You see that overused so much, and I kind of wish they took different elements from the modern era to combine into their sound. However, I really like the strings in the background of the verses. They give the song a very light-hearted and elegant feel. The bass line on here is also pretty groovy, and it's almost more standout than the main beat is. The guitar is subtle, and it also has this sort of 90s pop element to it, especially from pop that you'd see overseas, so I thought that was a pretty fitting element that kind of ties the track together in spite of the sort of generic modern pop influences here. The interlude is another 80s styled intermission, and for a shorter album, I think these sort of things work well for what they are. They don't really stand out, but they're nice transition pieces. Better Now has a sort of new wave element to it, from the pulsing and dominating bass to the simplistic dance beat and focus on the vocals. I do wish that there was a bit more variety in the verses to make it more layered and interesting. It sounds a bit hollow as it is now. The chorus is very good though. It has this sort of subtle approach to the vocals and the subject matter that I think fits better than if it were this sort of anthemic chorus. So I like that they kind of toned it back for the chorus. I also think the lyrics are a pretty relatable and well-written tale about feeling better now that you're out of a not-so-great relationship, but you're also still kind of pining for the feeling of love that you once had. It's something that I think is a bit overlooked in some relationship songs, so I'm glad they addressed it here. And now we get to one of the lead singles, Call Me Back, which is by far my favorite song on the album. This one just screams 90s pop, and I can't get enough of it. The vocals especially are totally reminiscent of 90s pop stars like Britney Spears and stuff like that. The keys, the low-key beats and bass line, along with the melancholy vocals, make this song probably one of the most bittersweet pop tunes that I've heard in quite a while. This is especially noticeable in the chorus. The male vocals also add an interesting contrast to the sound and the narrative, and the lyrics are also pretty endearing in their own right. I like the sort of unrequited yet supported love angle going on, and the background vocals, the way they're layered near the end, they just drive that emotion home, man. It's really good. Can't Be Mine is one of the other singles, and it's also a very good track, definitely one of the best ones here. It's yet another 90s inspired pop tune with a very crunchy bass line and a more melodic guitar. I like how they cut the instrumentals every so often to let the vocals breathe, and the wobbling synth during the chorus really ties the track back into that 80s sound that we established previously on the album. The pre-chorus has this sort of sugary, melancholic side to it as well, and I like the bombastic outro with the guitar finally coming out of its shell. It's a great way to convey the strength of the feelings that Sherilyn is expressing in the vocals and in the chorus. Now, the outro, If It Wasn't You, it's a bit less interesting compared to the other intermissions on the album. It's nice and mellow, but the vocal effect is kind of unnecessary and doesn't really fit the rest of the sound of the album, I feel. The lyrics are nice though, and I especially like the "This house is not a home without you" line. I think it drives the point of this album home and kind of sums up the message of the overall record nicely. So, for a debut record, this is honestly pretty damn good. They definitely have their sound established well enough. I think it's more of just kind of fine-tuning it from here. The biggest problems I think they're having is finding ways to combine their sort of 80s and 90s throwback sound with more modern pop elements. Some of the ways they did it here was a bit generic, and I feel like there are more experimental modern pop sounds that they could have went for that would actually work with their throwback sound. I also think more lyrical variety would help the band out. The way they're presented is pretty good, pretty relatable, it has a sort of love poem-esque style going on, but I feel like having a bit more variety in the subject matter would help them out. Overall, this was a nice project, and I look forward to seeing how they grow and experiment from here. I'm feeling a decent 7 on Disco Hugh's debut album. But of course we do have to talk about the album cover here, and this album cover, it works well for what it is. It definitely has that sort of like childlike, school-based sort of vibe going on. It's very fitting for the title with the Yearbook, but it's not really the style that I would like. It's a bit too busy, I think, and I think they could have captured the sort of essence of youth and young love and stuff like that a little bit better. Although I do like how personal the pictures are, because it seems to be of them and of their lives and their relationships, so I like that angle, but I think maybe they could have focused on a few of those pictures and then just made the album cover out of that instead of being like a sort of collage setting. But those are my thoughts on Disco Hugh's The Yearbook. What did you guys think about this album? Did you not know about it and I introduced it to you? Because that would be pretty cool. But let me know what you thought in the comments. And until the next one, farewell.